Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Jonathan Keller. I am the president of California Family Council, and we are here today on the steps of the Capitol to raise awareness about the deep concerns we have regarding AB 1955. I know many of you are pressed for time, and we have some legislators who are with us who need to get on to floor sessions, so I'm going to let them begin, and we have a stellar lineup of speakers for you today that are going to share why this bill unconstitutionally infringes on the relationship between parents and their children, and why it really endangers vulnerable youth who desperately need their parents the most. So to start with, I'd like to welcome up State Senator Kelly Seyarto from the 32nd Senate District. Senator, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me this morning. All right.
Hey, John, give us a thumbs up when you're ready.
We're going to wait for one more member of the media to get started here. So I'll be brief because I need to get to floor session so that we can deal with this bill. AB 1955 very simply undermines the foundational role that parents and the crucial partnership between parents and educators. This is a parents' rights issue. When you're talking about a child announcing that they are gay, that's one thing. But when they want to medically alter who they are, that is a medical procedure that parents have to be involved in. And unfortunately, this whole issue, which is much more prevalent today than when I was in high school, but this whole issue has devolved into ideological missiles being fired at different camps. There is reasonable ways of dealing with this issue, and we need to get to that. AB 1955 is not that. AB 1955 undermines the role that parents have in ensuring the safety of their kids. And that's what this is really about, is making sure that we have a process where we have the best outcomes for kids that are in distress. If you're keeping secrets from your parents and you're leaving the house as one person but acting out at school as a different person, that could be a real problem, and parents are going to find out eventually through the informal channels of communication. So the schools and the parents can work together to ensure a great outcome for their kids and determine what is the best way to support these kids as they go through some of these issues that they're having. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to the MC here, and get busy on the floor trying to defend the rights of parents to be involved in their parents' life or in their kids' lives, and ensure that our kids are being treated as not a political tool, but as a human being that we can support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Seyarto. Next, I'd like to welcome up from my hometown of Fresno, Assemblymember Jim Patterson, who represents the 8th Assembly District. He had an excellent statement on this bill last week, or a few weeks ago when it was originally jammed through, and looking forward to having him share that with all of you today. Thank you. Assemblyman Patterson.
I'm going to be pretty direct in my comments here. In the nearly 12 years that I have been in the State Assembly, I have never seen an effort to damage the relationship between children and their parents like this one, especially at a time when children need their parents' love and understanding the most. Now, tragically, which is so often the case in this building, this bill was gutted and amended in the Senate. And it's going to trap these children behind a government-imposed wall that shuts them off from the love and the care that their parents can provide. This bill isn't just bad policy or bad governance. This bill is evil. If it comes to me on the assembly floor, I'm going to be an absolute emphatic no. The state does not own our children. They have no business getting between parents and children, especially on something as potentially damaging as this. When children are in circumstances of uncertainty and questioning, the very worst thing we can do is wall out mom and dad. And that's what this bill does. And I almost 12 years here in this building, and quite frankly, I'm ashamed that a bill this ugly has gotten this far. And I hope that cooler heads prevail on this, and that there will be some who will rethink this whole notion that it's government's job to put a wall between mom and dad and kids when they're going through difficulties that mom and dad need to know about, particularly when the outcomes with surgery and other methodologies that are absolute and irrevocable might very well be done on their children. And so I'm an emphatic no. And as I said at the outset, this isn't just a bad bill. This is an evil bill.
That's right.
There's no excuse for the government to get in the middle of this. What bothers me the most is that those who are hawking this bill believe that mom and dad are the problem instead of the solution, the help, the care, and the love. That is a sad indictment on those in this building and in government positions that can author and actually pass bills like this, that they think so little of the parent-child relationship. So I'm hoping that this bill does not see the light of day over in the Senate. I've long since lost hope that the Senate can reconcile itself to some of these terrible bill decisions. I think the biggest problem here is that there is a political agenda that underpins what's happening here. And it's an anti-family, anti-traditional life, against routinely accepted and understood biology. And as the Heritage Foundation has suggested in their briefing on this, having government getting in the way like this is going to be patently unconstitutional. And I am looking forward, if this passes and gets out and the governor has the nerve to sign it, that there will be litigation into the courts and we will test it on its constitutionality. Thanks to the Family Council here. I've known these folks for a long, long time. They're really good at what they do. They have a heart for kids and for families. I join them in their opposition and vehemently characterize this as evil.
Yep.
And there's a Latin expression up on the floor of the assembly, roughly translated, it is for the legislature to do just acts. This is not just acts. This is playing favorites for a particular political, well-organized, very noisy group of people who can't get their way through relationships with families and children and the schools. So now they're going to basically wall off the kids from their families at a time when they need the love and understanding of their moms and dads and their families. What could be worse for children when they're going through difficult times? Moms and dads are there to help them get through those difficult times, love them through it, and see to it that the common sense and the decency and the understanding of human biology and relationships between men and women, the creation of children and the forming of family bonds. These are tried and tested and true relationships in our society that the modern age should not be shredding. And that's what this bill attempts to do. So I'm an absolute emphatic no if it gets to our side of the building. And thank you for the council for being steadfast and out front on this. And thank you also to those of you in the media who have come out here to allow us to be as clear as we possibly can be as moms and dads of people of faith and people who believe that this is the wrong approach. It hurts, it does not help. And sadly, it's actually having some traction here in this building. That's a sad commentary on the political state, particularly of the Senate and particularly of the ruling party in this building that is tampering with the fundamentals of family relationships and the raising and developing of healthy children. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman Patterson. And I just want to briefly say, for the sake of the media, I've had the privilege of knowing Assemblyman Patterson for the last 32 years. My first ever political event that I ever attended was with my parents. I was, I think, 10 years old during his campaign for mayor back in 1992. And we're just so grateful for his long-standing support, both of our organization, California Family Council, the other organization I used to run, Right to Life Central California, but just his long-standing support in the public square of parental rights and family values. And as he's termed out this year and kind of on the twilight of his state legislative career, we're just so grateful for his leadership over these many years. So thank you again, Assemblyman. It means a lot. Next, I'd like to go ahead and welcome up, we're waiting on a couple of other speakers to come, but I'd like to welcome up Pastor Brandon Campbell. He is the Northern California Regional Director and the Capital Liaison for Capital Baptists for Biblical Values and a good friend of California Family Council. Pastor Brandon.
Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan said, Pastor Brandon Campbell with the California Baptists for Biblical Values, and just want to offer a pastor's perspective on AB 1955. Section 2D of AB 1955 reads, parents and families have an important role to play in the lives of young people. Studies confirm that LGBTQ youth thrive when they have parental support and feel safe sharing their identities with them. But it can be harmful to force young people to share their full identity before they are ready. So read that statement, I think parents are important, yes, but let's not tell parents that their child is considering a surgery that would mutilate their body and be irreversible. Don't let the bill's language fool you. The bill's author sees parents as a barrier to an agenda and wants to remove that barrier. The phrase important role to play is a vast understatement. Parents play the most vital role in their children's lives. AB 1955 goes against the natural order. Anytime you go against God's natural order, you will cause substantial damage. And damage always starts with the children. God's design is for parents to raise their children, not a school or government. In Proverbs 1:8 it says, my son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother, for they shall be an ornament of grace unto thy head and chains about thy neck. The Bible tells parents to train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old he will not depart from it. Parents are given the God-given right to raise their children. I was a youth pastor for 14 and a half years, and 7 of which I also taught in a public school, in a private school. And I've been a senior pastor for almost 9 years. I have found that the best policy is to keep parents informed and involved in their kids' lives. Right. If a child feels awkward in their body, the parent should be immediately informed. If kids are at risk of suicide, parents should be the first ones to be notified.
Absolutely.
Children who are the happiest and thrive, even though that child might not see it at the time, are those who have parents who are active and involved in every area of their life. Psalm 127 tells us, lo, children are the heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. The facts are that children are born either boys or girls, and they are an heritage given to parents, not to schools or governments.
Right.
Look, the vast majority of California parents love and cherish their children. And parents who want to be informed and teachers who don't want to keep secrets are not nasty people who need to be moved out of the way. They care for their kids deeply. AB 1955 divides parents and children, making them more confused and vulnerable to people who might do them harm. We should not seek to weaken the parent-child relationship in this state, but we should seek to strengthen it.
Right.
God's design is always best. So
Amen.
we ask Assemblyman Ward to withdraw AB 1955. If not, we ask every senator to vote no on AB 1955. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Pastor Brandon. Next, I would like to welcome up Sarah Renner. She is an education specialist and a teacher and works with the Education Impact organization. Sarah, thank you.
Good morning. AB 1955 discriminates against students with disabilities by hindering parental access to information that enables them to request disabilities assessment on behalf of their child. Under federal law, disabled children cannot access assessment or academic supports without parental consent. For 25 years, I've served as a teacher and education advocate for special needs children. Special needs children are endangered by AB 1955 because it withholds critical information from parents about psychosocial gender transition. AB 1955 requires the state, special schools, advanced diagnostic centers to withhold observations of gender nonconforming behaviors from parents when conducting complex diagnostic evaluations. As an educational specialist, I know that parents are in desperate need of comprehensive assessment and spend years seeking access to these diagnostic centers. The state must not require them to withhold critical information from the parents. In violation of federal disabilities law, most California schools are implementing psychosocial interventions not based on disabilities identification and agreed upon evidence-based services, but instead on the child's self-identifying gender dysphoria without evaluation for possible comorbidities like autism, depression, anxiety, effects of sexual trauma, and personality disorders. AB 1955 forbids parent knowledge or involvement without the consent of the student, including students 3 years old, and children with disabilities such as severe nonverbal autism and cognitive impairment. These children and disabled teens cannot practically or legally give consent to psychosocial gender transitions, nor consent to the proper inclusion of their parent as their legal advocate. All children benefit from the support and legal protections of their parents, but children with disabilities are especially vulnerable. Undisclosed and experimental social transition on disabled children cause disproportionate harm and violate federal disabilities law. Please ask your assembly member and senator to vote no on AB 1955.
Yes.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that very much. Next, I'd like to welcome up Jonathan Zackerson, who is the Roseville City School District Trustee, and he is the founder of Reopen California Schools, Students First California co-founder, and a Protect Kids CA co-founder. Jonathan, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good morning. Like I said, my name is Jonathan Zackerson. I am a school board member, but I do speak on my own behalf this morning and on the behalf of Students First California, which I'm president. It's a nonprofit focused on Students First policies and really helping support parents across California. So while Students First California appreciates the bill's authors for taking up this important issue to schools, parents, and students, the bill's approach is misguided. Any legislation on the topic of supporting children with gender identity issues should always err on the side of involving parents. There is a reason courts have consistently affirmed parents of having a fundamental right to direct the care and upbringing of their children. Parents know and care for their children more than anyone else, and ultimately are responsible for them in every setting, school, home, and elsewhere. Notifying and involving parents in something as paramount as when a school takes an active role in socially transitioning a child is critical for the well-being of children and for maintaining trust between schools and parents. AB 1955 would do the opposite by prohibiting schools from enacting or enforcing policies or to bring parents into the process of supporting their own children, and would strengthen policies meant to keep secrets from parents. This bill would erode trust between schools and parents and further exacerbate enrollment issues schools are facing today. Additionally, parents of students under 18 years old in public school have an absolute right to access all records related to their children, and the editing or withholding of any of those records is prohibited. These records include the gender and name in which the child goes by at school, regardless of if the gender or name matches the student's official government documents. AB 1955 would enable and strengthen policies that violate this right. Lastly, several teachers' First Amendment rights have been violated from 4 secrecy policies, which this bill would strengthen. This has led to costly litigation for school districts. AB 1955 would put schools at legal and financial risk, as courts thus far have found the approach this bill takes as unconstitutional and violates the rights of both parents and teachers. And for these reasons, we encourage the Senate to oppose this bill, and if it advances, for everyone else to oppose it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate you coming very much. We have, I believe, 2 more speakers. It's always possible we have more people coming, but I know he just walked in, but if he's all right, I'd like to welcome our good friend Lance Christensen, who is the Vice President of Education Policy and Government Affairs for California Policy Center, also the former Republican candidate for State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and a fierce defender of children and families. Lance, thank you for being here.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk about a bill that really is one of the worst that the legislature's ever had. The state of California is 49th in literacy. Only 46% of our kids are at grade level when it comes to issues of reading. They're less than that, less than a third when it comes to issues of math. We spend $23,000 per kid per year and still rank at the bottom of every metric when it comes to education policy. And yet the legislature this year is going to pass a bill that removes the ability for parents to have input upon their kids' education. In fact, it's even worse than that. It destroys the trust between a parent and a school when it's most important to have that trust. Any school district that decides that it's more important to have a policy which requires teachers against their personal beliefs and consciousness to lie to parents is unconscionable. It doesn't make any sense. Not only is this a violation of our parents' fundamental rights under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, it also abridges our free speech. And the courts have said as much. And in fact, in the analysis for the Senate Appropriations Committee, the Attorney General acknowledges that this bill will be litigated. And not litigated a little bit, but a lot. And we've seen this. And so far, the parents of California are 5-0 in the courts when it comes to parental rights. We want to continue that pathway forward and make sure we defend parents and their ability to actually have good, trusted, and accountable relationships with our schools. And for that reason, we oppose AB 1955 and have to ask the legislature to step back and think, what are your priorities? Is it educating our kids, or is it destroying the bond between the parent, the child, and the teacher, which is a trifecta of harm? So we want to avoid that as much as possible. So we're in steadfast opposition to AB 1955. We hope that the legislature will step back, think really hard about what's important, and then we can move forward and have a conversation about how to actually improve California's education going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lance. And I apologize for throwing you right up there. I know traffic's been bad today. We're waiting, I think, on one or two more speakers, so I really appreciate you being here. Greg, do we have any word from Tanner DeBella? Do we know? So with that in mind, I think we will, if he shows up a little bit later, he's one of our friends from the American Council, and we'd love to have him speak, depending on traffic. If he shows up a little bit late, we'll have him speak as well. But in closing, I would just like to have Erin Friday, who is a co-lead with the organization Our Duty, come up and speak. She's been one of our staunchest allies on these issues, and we are really grateful for all of our speakers today. I want to say we invited several other organizations from across the state of California to join us. Former school board president Sonia Shaw, whose case out of Chino Valley Unified is kind of at the center of a lot of these policy debates. We also invited some of our friends from Capital Resource Institute, Karen England and Gina Gleason from Real Impact and Calvary Chapel Chino Hills. We invited them to come, but unfortunately, just due to the extremely short timeline, they were not able to be with us today. I just want to point out, unfortunately, as Assemblyman Patterson noted, this is a hallmark of gut and amend legislation. And it's deeply disappointing that the legislature, instead of bringing up this type of proposal in normal legislative fashion, they are trying to use all the legislative tricks in the book to short circuit the democratic process. They are trying to hide what's happening from the people. And as we saw by them bypassing the suspense file in the Appropriations Committee just on Monday and pushing the bill to be heard and voted on the floor of the Senate today, they are trying to deny concerned citizens the opportunity to organize and to effectively oppose the legislation through these public types of events. So we really appreciate the media being here today. We appreciate all of you watching online for sharing this. And it's just deeply concerning that that the legislature continues to try to silence the voice of the people on these issues. So, Aaron, I was about to have you speak, but right before that, I did see that our good friend, the Assembly Minority Leader, James Gallagher, has arrived, and we would like to give him an opportunity to speak before the floor session begins. We know that they're on a very tight time frame. So, Assemblyman Gallagher, if you'd like to say a few words, we'd love to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be with you this morning, and thank you for inviting me to be here. We need to oppose this bill. We need to stop this bill from passing. Right. And so, many of us have called this out. Let's start with where this all really began. Is the Department of Education had put out a guidance and had been telling school districts that they could not tell parents, that they could not talk to parents, that they should keep secrets from parents. So that's where we started in this whole thing, is the Department of Education put out a guidance that has no basis in statutory law in the state of California, has no basis in any law in the state of California, or federal law for that matter. In fact, as has been pointed out, federal law says that you do need to share information with parents. Federal law requires that. And so now, after many school districts said, look, we're not going to do that. We want to talk to parents. When it comes to kids, parents must be involved. That should be the default. Because who more than anyone knows what's best for their kids? Their parents. And I don't care what kind of issue it is at school. Mental health, special education, healthcare. You go to the parent and you talk to the parent about those issues. You don't exclude them. And that has been the policy of the state of California by the Department of Education. And they are the ones that have been excluding parents. And so when school districts fought back, now we have this legislation. Now we have this legislation that's really trying to put that in statute, that you cannot have policies that inform parents. There's also been a lot of misinformation about what these policies do and what they don't. We're looking out for the best interest of the child, but that starts with the default policy that informs parents. And the other problem with this legislation is that it says the default is that school counselors and administrators and teachers, they're always safe. They're always doing what's right for the child. And that the parent, by default, is always doing what's wrong for the child. That is the default of the policy. That in no way could a parent be helpful to a kid who's experiencing gender dysphoria. That's crazy and it's outrageous, right? And so what we're saying, and I think what most people with common sense are saying, is that you involve parents, you don't exclude them. And this all started with the state of California's policy out of the Department of Education, and that's what we've been fighting back against, and that's why we need to stop this legislation from moving forward. So I thank the people who've been involved with this effort, and we will be continuing to try and fight against this. We'll be pointing out all the false accusations. We'll be pointing out what's actually been going on with the law and what has actually been going on in this process. It all needs to be brought to light in these committee hearings and in votes in this legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. And I just want to echo that. This bill is wrong morally. It is wrong legally and constitutionally. It's wrong procedurally. And it is harming the relationship between parents and children. It is creating an entire class of vulnerable young people who are now going to be subject to the whims of a predatory medical industry. And I say that justifiably because I have heard the stories and I have met the young people who have been victimized in our state and around the country by the doctors and the professionals who should be first doing no harm and protecting them instead of coming between them and their parents. So for our final speaker today, I'd like to welcome up our good friend Erin Friday from Our Duty, and she has some great comments on that, and I think she'll be perfect to close us out today. Erin, thank you for being here.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Family Council, for inviting me to speak. My name is Erin Friday, and I am a nasty parent, according to Senator Scott Wiener, because I oppose the LGBTQ Caucus's Gut and Amend Bill, AB 1955. I am a lifelong Democrat, a co-lead of Our Duty, a member of Democrats for an Informed Approach to Gender, and part of Protect Kids California. I am also a mother of a daughter who used to believe that she was a boy, a mother of a daughter who had her name changed and pronouns changed secretively by her school without so much as a phone call to me because, I quote, I was unsafe. The school had never met me. They never had a conversation with me. So let me dispel the rhetoric and the lies about the parental notification policies. I wrote or was consulted with every parental notification policy that was passed in the state of California. None of the policies are outing policies. Not one policy has one word about gay kids. The entire point of the parental notification policies was to prevent schools from participating and encouraging social transition of a child without parental knowledge or consent. Tethering the LGB to the T is a trap. Assemblyman Chris Ward, the puppet author of this bill, conflated a student's sexual attraction status with transgender. Obviously, he did not bother to read any of the parental notification policies. He is just following orders of Equality California, a well-funded trans-agenda nonprofit, and Planned Parenthood, the country's second largest distributor of cross-sex hormones. And the Teachers Association, the group overrun with leaders who believe that your child is their child, and they are more interested in trans-identifying children than creating scientists and mathematicians. I wonder if Mr. Ward ever felt that since he is same-sex attracted, that he was really a girl. I wonder what his life would have been like if the teachers told him that he was born wrong and affirmed his belief in his wrongness. If the school told him where he could get hormones to fix his gender incongruence and help him be his authentic self. Tying the T and the Q to the LGB is a trick that my party, the Democrats, does relentlessly to hide the fact that a child who believes that they are transgender is a child who is rejecting their body, a child filled with self-loathing, a child who fell for the falsehood fed to them nonstop at their schools that if they are uncomfortable with their body, if they don't feel great all the time, if they do not fit into the regressive stereotypes of what a girl or a boy should feel, then they are born wrong. Schools are telling our children that they can be neither male or female, that they can decide their sex, and that their natural body is meaningless. These schools are celebrating these children's bravery in rejecting their natural bodies. AB 1955 is giving adults, the schools, strangers, really, ephemeral people in a child's life, the right to affirm someone else's child's distress with their body. The school will decide whether you parents are safe, whether you can know the secret that the substitute teacher knows, the secret that all the other students know, the secret that is kept in the shadow files outside of the reach of FERPA, the secret that is embedded into the computer systems that automatically flip names back and forth depending upon who the recipient is of the message. The secret that the teachers are told that they must keep for the safety of the child, even though the child has never had an abuse claim asserted against them. The school will be the judge, jury, and executioner, and you parents will never even know that you were deemed an abuser, unworthy of knowing that your child is suffering. You will never be permitted to help your child. You will never be able to answer your child's cry for help. The Attorney General, Rob Bonta, stated in his lawsuit against Chino Valley that 87% of students who believe that they were born wrong, those who take on a transgender identity, have contemplated suicide. 87%. And yet, he wants to keep the parents in the dark that their child may be suicidal. Teenage suicides happen mainly at home, not at school. But Bonta and his ilk needs to ensure that the parents are unaware of their child's acute distress. I do a lot of speaking engagements. I usually start with a question. I ask, how many people in the audience knew or even heard of a trans-identified child 10 years ago? Almost no one's hand goes up. And then I ask, how many people now know of a trans-identified child? And almost every hand goes up. Why is this? Because a transgender child is manufactured. It is a social contagion that schools are perpetuating. And our legislature, despite knowing that post-transition these kids have a 19 times higher suicide rate. AB 1955 is stripping parents of an opportunity to help their children learn to love and accept their beautiful natural body. I accidentally got that opportunity because my daughter took on her trans identity during COVID, and so I could hear the teachers calling her by a different name. I could hear them using different pronouns. I removed her from the school, and not surprisingly, once I did that, and once I got her the mental health that she needed, she no longer identified as being transgender. She celebrates her female body. She is comfortable now as almost an adult in her female body. Isn't that what we want? Our children to accept themselves, to look in the mirror and see the beautiful self that they are, instead of creating kids who reject their natural body and believe that they need to go under the knife or take cross-sex hormones to be acceptable. So with that, I'm disgusted. I'm disgusted with my party. For 37 years, I believed in the Democrat Party. I was fooled. They are evil. They are evil, and they know what they're doing is wrong.
Right.
They know that they are not the parents of our kids, despite Scott Wiener saying they're our kids. They're not your kids, Senator Wiener. They're our children.
Right.
And I have yet to hear another adult say that they will lay down their life for my child. But I'll tell you, 99% of all parents will say that they will do that for their child. 1955 is unconstitutional, morally corrupt, and it's an embarrassment for our state. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Greg, I'm just making sure no other speakers, correct? Well, so the members of the media, thank you so much for being here today. I think any of our speakers would be happy to answer questions, do one-on-one interviews, or provide further statements if you need. But again, I want to thank all of our speakers for being here, especially the legislators, Assemblyman Patterson, his team. Thank you again for being here. And if you have any other questions, you can reach out to our Vice President and Capitol Director, Greg Burt. He will be here to answer questions, and we look forward to speaking with you depending on the outcome of the floor vote today. Thank you so much. God bless.